Welcome back to Because We Love You, a podcast dedicated to helping you live a life of wellness. My name is Stacy, and this is my co-host, Jade.
Hi, everyone. This week we are talking about happiness, but more specifically, our habits of happiness that we can create.
If you listened last week, you know our habits give us hope, right? There's hope in our habits.
Woo-hoo.
So if you find something that inspires you, please check out our show notes on our website and follow us on Instagram or Facebook. We would love to interact with you. You can also watch on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
We've got all the ways.
So today is part 2 of happiness. Here we are back in our happiness gear today. How's your day going? Are you feeling happy, Jade?
I'm so happy.
So happy. I love that. I love it.
Trying to be, right?
Yeah? Yeah.
And I'm happy because I feel like we have started to create habits.
Yes,
that make
working
me happy,
on our happiness
right?
habits. Yeah.
Because when we do that, we can create that deep-seated, meaningful definition, that well-being that we've talked about is happiness.
That's right. So if you missed last week, we'll do a quick recap. Okay, you should go back and watch it because there was a lot of singing. So
And there
if
might
you
be some
missed
today.
it, there might be more. Turns out singing makes us happy, or you happy.
You too. I saw you last
listening to
weekend.
makes me happy. Oh yeah, I am happy listening to country music. So anyway, as a quick review, we learned from our research that there are really 3 areas that contribute to happiness. One is genes, which accounts for, estimates vary between about 40 to 50%. So maybe a little depressing, but other things we can control. About 10% or so is from life circumstances. So the good, the bad, just things that happen to you.
The day of the week.
Yeah. Also kind of out of your control, right? But the good news is that 40% of happiness seems to be attributable to habits, daily activities, things that we can control. And so today that's going to be our focus. We hope that this is a happy episode for you because you'll learn some things that maybe you can just work into your daily patterns.
Yes. So all of this information came from Greater Good, Berkeley.
Yes.
Correct?
UC Berkeley has the Greater Good Science Center, which has been so helpful to us as we've been looking through their stuff.
And it's in your show notes. So
Yeah.
if you want to go down that and look and investigate, they've got lots of good content and things
Yes.
that can help you. So we found that very interesting. They kind of gave 6 practical habits
Yes.
that you can incorporate into your life
Yep.
that can produce happiness and
That's
that they're
right.
linked to happiness. And again, this is over 50 years of research. So this is very encouraging. This is not just something that was like a quick study that
Yeah.
over time and time again, when people decided, hey, I'm going to work on these 6 areas of our life, they were happier.
Yeah. And what I love about this, before we jump into the 6 things, is that it really lines up with a lot of the things that we've talked about so far on Because We Love You. So if you've been following along and listening to the episodes, a lot of the things that we have brought up seem to be linked to happiness. Yeah. So it'll be great to see them show up again. So it may feel repetitive, but I think it's a good reminder.
And it might be that we see this as we go in deeper into a lot of topics here on Because We Love You, that it really boils down to 5 or 6 different things, which won't seem so overwhelming, right?
Right.
If we know that, like, hey, these are the 5 things that we need to work on in our life, in our overall life, to be less
happier.
anxious, to
Yes.
be less depressed, to be happier,
Sleep
to
better.
Yeah. So to me, it was like an encouraging moment. It's
Yeah.
like, this is rhythms. We're seeing the rhythm of how we can live our best life.
It's all
And
coming
that's what
together.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're wanting. So the first one that a habit that we should strive to create is paying attention.
That's a good one. I love it. Another way they talk about it at UC Berkeley is this idea of savoring the moment. To savor. That sounds so good, right? And I've tried to be more intentional because I think that's what it's about, right? Is being more intentional when you're in a moment moment and just recognition of the space you're in. And so I try to do that. And maybe that's just a good thing we can do for each other. Just whenever we're in this moment that's so good, it's like stop and look around. And how great is this right now?
And even, paying attention just makes me think like being present, but there it takes a moment to do that. So maybe the moment doesn't look very good at first. Maybe it doesn't look good at all. But if we don't seize it, then we can't make it better. And so I just think about being present and looking for the opportunity to act or to stay or to pause. I spoke about this one time. It's like an element of like lingering. Like, I just think that people who linger have a better time. If the event ends at 8, then I'm probably not even close to thinking about leaving at 8, right? I'm like, I'm at least staying till 9, 9:30, 10, and who knows? But I just want to linger because I want to
all the good things happen.
Yes. There's no programs, there's no plans. It's just I'm paying attention, and if you create that habit, so it may not come naturally to everyone, but if you create a habit of it and looking for that, like, no, this is the time to stay. This is the time to savor that moment. We also at the beach sometimes, or when I'm with the kids, they'll be like, it'll be time to leave. And we've done this with our kids sometimes. It'll be like, they've been hellions. But then it is time to leave and they're perfect. But we're like, we're savoring this moment. We're going to be present. And if you create that a part of your life, I think that you can have those moments of happiness. So you don't view that engagement or that time as like all boring. No, because you had that ending savor.
Yes, I love that. And it's so funny you say that because now our husbands have learned that we do this. So if we have an event like, a small group or something for church or whatever we're doing, our husbands know, like, if everyone else is leaving, they are not leaving anytime soon. Like, we are going to stay, we're going to bond, we're going to play with hair and snuggle and talk. And
I invite you to the linger.
Yes,
if you ever come to any of our events,
us.
We want you to linger.
Yes,
pay attention.
Plan on staying late.
Be present. Create that as a habit in your life.
I love that. And some people do this more intentionally. It reminds me of like people who meditate a lot, who are just very mindful in those ways. So there are other ways to work this in than if you're maybe an introvert and you don't gain energy from being around people like we do. Maybe engaging in meditation. They find that mindful people have a stronger immune system response, which I thought was great, and show lower levels of anxiety and hostility. So I thought that was a cool finding. Meditate, linger, savor, be intentional.
Yeah, I love it. I think number 2 on their list was something that we definitely talk a lot about is keeping our friends close. So keep your friends close. So what does that mean to create a habit of keeping your friends close?
Well, I think you have to work, our time, of course, is a valuable resource. And so I think you have to be willing to allow those people into those minutes. Like, it really is just minutes, because when you look at the research with quality of relationships like that, it's not about quantity. So as we've talked about before, I think in our connection episode, our community episode, you don't need a ton of friends, but you need a couple of good people that can support you, can show up when the burden's too heavy, who you feel like you can cry when you're having a sad day, who you feel like will celebrate with you when you have the big wins. And it just takes time for those things to form, right? And I'm so thankful to people who have stuck with it, with us, because sometimes we can be a lot. I know that might be surprising to all of you, but we can be a lot to be around. We've had a lot of years and a lot of time together. And I think what we try and say to people is just come, just spend time with us, linger. You just have to it's minutes, right? And it's quality minutes with the people you love. And when we're so busy, that feels like something that we maybe don't have time for. But as we talked about in the community episode, like, give yourself permission to build strong social bonds, because it relates to everything else: happiness, anxiety, sleep.
And I think it's important that maybe it's not every time you're just so motivated to do it, but it's knowing that it is a habit. And you know that once you have that moment, or you spend that time, or you go to that event, that you'll be glad you did. And as we'll talk about later, it kind of establishes like a routine of that, because it will be worth it. But time is precious. We get it. And I still battle and talk about it a lot. I'm like, because I want that same thing with my children, and I want that same same thing with my parents, and I want that same thing with my brothers and sisters. And so, and then it's like friends too.
Right.
But friends are family. I mean, when you keep them close, they are family.
That's
and
true.
they can support you like that. So create those habits of
Yeah.
keeping your friends close. Because when you're going through a lot, and when you're going through good times, like you
Yes.
want to have friends, like if you have the biggest success in your life, I don't want to celebrate by myself. Please
Yes.
do not let me celebrate by myself.
Bring
I want
all
to
the people.
celebrate with the people in my
Yep.
life. And when I'm crying and when things are bad, I want to cry with the people in my life.
And I think I like that you brought up about sticking with it and just showing up even when you don't feel like it, because I think that this is something that people don't think of as a habit that they need to build into their lives. Like we have a group, for example, we meet on Wednesday nights and read a book or, play volleyball, just do different things in many weeks, right? We talked about this last night. Like most of us didn't want to show up because you're tired. It's the middle of the week. Our kids have homework. We haven't had dinner yet, but we did. And it was wonderful. And we had fun and we connected. And so it's like, even in those moments when you feel like I don't have time for this or the energy, or I just can't do it today, like just showing up is so important.
Yes. So I think that when you see that, we've seen that that's brought so much happiness.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've got to create that. I have to have that at least once a week. I've got to have some connectedness to a friend. And I think we take it for granted, but that's why we want to talk to you guys and we want to bring you in. Like, do it. Do not make the work week just about 9 to 5 and coming home. Oh my goodness.
And saving it for the weekends.
Yes,
I used to be guilty of that. Like only have fun or be with friends on weekends. But I mean, your life is during the week too. So you just gotta live it.
Yeah. And you will be happy for it.
Yeah. Third one was exercise, which just come up again in a lot of the things that we've talked about, but it's huge. Even Dr. Ross mentioned in an earlier episode about treatments for anxiety, that for people who have mild to moderate depression or anxiety, aerobics exercise can be as effective as medication. So if you want to be happy, work out, right?
Yes.
That's another thing. It's a habit though. It's hard to stick to.
Move. It is interesting that it is so hard to stick to because it does
Yeah.
create such a reward pathway.
Yes, it feels so good.
I don't think anybody can say I went for that walk or I did that thing and I felt terrible.
Yeah.
They like, you always feel
Yep.
better about yourself. You feel more confident. You feel more energized. You feel like a higher self-esteem.
Yeah.
All of those things. You're actually more efficient at working.
Yep.
Like sometimes if I exercise and then I go to like do that paper or I'm like because your brain just fires
More
better.
focused.
So it's so interesting that somehow in that habit formation we break that connection and we can't form that habit. But even just talking about it so much has helped me because I think Stacy is much better at keeping that as a habit.
I try.
Yeah. But you are, and
Yeah.
I'm not as good. And I go through seasons of being better or not, but it's just this constant reminder that even if maybe I don't do a lot. So I'm for the one, if you want to run 5 miles like Stacy did this morning, there are people out there and that's amazing. But if you feel like you can't do that and you just need to walk 2 miles like me, join me on the walk, but both of those are extremely beneficial. And I don't
Absolutely.
necessarily, maybe in calorie burning, they're different, but not in the habit of happiness and not in just that general well-being and of anxiety and depression and things that it can
Yeah,
cause.
I think that's good. And just, kind of like we said with friends, just show up, like just do something. Like there are definitely days or even weeks where I do not want to run. My body hurts or I just don't feel up to it. I don't feel mentally strong enough to do it. So I'll walk instead or do a yoga video or do something else. So it doesn't have to be the same thing all of the time, but have a few different things in your rotation that you enjoy, and it's okay to take a break.
It is.
Yeah,
It is. And get back up again.
that's right. As long as you get back to it.
That's right. Number 4 on their list. This one's a hard one. So, but don't hold grudges. So if we want to be happy, we've got to create a habit of not holding grudges.
Yeah, that's tough. Forgiveness is hard because, truly, people do terrible things, and probably sometimes don't deserve from, your standpoint to be forgiven. And so
Yeah, I think it's
gosh.
important that we've done terrible things.
Yeah,
I think,
true. We've hurt people.
think back on people I've hurt or said or done. And so it's important to have that empathy of, yes, this has happened to me, but it's happening to others. To me, it makes it a little bit easier to do the forgiving when I look back on the things that I've done and
that's good.
Hope, prayed, asked for that forgiveness. So that does make it a little bit easier, but I personally think, and research leads to this too, that the faith and their spiritual walk has a lot to do with happiness. Over and over again, you'll see that recurring theme that people who spend time in their faith and they pray and they worship and they gain strength in a higher being, God, that they are happier. And I think that has a lot to even do with this principle of forgiveness. Because when we think about it, that's the ultimate forgiveness has been Christ Jesus and what he has done for us. And so we're like, if he can forgive us, then how can we not?
Who are we
like,
not to
how can we
forgive?
not forgive?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you have to trust those people
I was
again
gonna say,
or go back. Yeah, this doesn't mean like you need to build a relationship with that person needs to be in your circle, but just not carrying that, although that's way easier said than done, just not carrying that grudge, because that's going to weigh, it's going to weigh on you.
And probably if you're around me long enough, you've heard this, but like hurt people. And so sometimes when we're hurting, we've hurt people. And then that's just like this trickle effect. So maybe viewing forgiveness or hurt from a different angle, saying like, what happened to them that they were so mean to me? You know, it reminds me, my daughter came home from school a couple weeks ago, and that particular day she had really dressed up. Like she had like picked out her outfit and she looked really pretty and looked really, really cute. But she came home and she doesn't do this often, but she was like, this girl told me how ugly I was. And I know I'm gonna cry probably right now. And I was like, really? And so immediately, because I knew that she had like fixed up and made a special effort to feel pretty that day, it kind of hurt me. I was like, really? Like that's what she said. And so we had this whole talk of, and I immediately knew, I'm like, that friend, there was something, there was some jealousy, there was some hurt, there was something that she was trying to get at Bella, because one, that's never permissible to say that. That's hurtful to anybody. I don't care what. But two, we knew that she had taken some special effort. And so, but talking to your kids about that, not being mad at her, not being mean, not retaliating. But I'm like, well, wonder why she said that. Wonder why she was so hurt that she wanted to hurt people. And I think it gives us a different perspective, and we don't hold on to that, and she's not mean to her, and that we're not mean to the people in our life, but we're just like, hey, I'm gonna forgive you, I'm gonna let this go.
This connects great. So one of the findings about forgiveness or dropping a grudge was that people who do not hold grudges tend to feel better about themselves, right? And so, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of that. When you think of it that way and think, well, what was that person going through? It's not about me, right? It's not about me and how I look. It's about them and what they're going through. And that's just, an empathetic way to process that. We try and work with that with our kids too all of the time, because that's our impulse when someone hurts us is to hurt them back. And so what we say in our house is like, when someone's mean to you, it gives you a chance to be nice anyway, to be nice back, right? And so trying to break that impulse early of like, you're mean, so I'm going to be mean back. And we all do that, but trying to stop in those moments and think like, well, I can, and I think, I know you've told Bella that before, like when someone says something to you, compliment them, even if they say something mean, say something nice to them. Well, I think you look pretty today, and that's not easy, right? But ultimately it's good for us.
Also teaching our kids and ourselves, though, not to take abuse, whether it's verbal, because I've had people or heard stories where they're just constantly forgiving and giving them a way out and an excuse. That's not permission to continually assault you or to tell you these things, because that's what brainwashing is. And we see this, and people will try to hold power over you by telling you you're not enough, you're this, you're that, and you cannot let that that's gain a seed into your heart, into your life. You have to stand up and say, well, I know who I am, and not let that voice feed at all, but not be mean, because that doesn't do anything for anybody. It just makes you more.
Just need to get out of that situation is the most important thing. That as we talked about, that person doesn't need to be your person if that's how they act. But
Yeah,
just
because if
moving
you
on from
believe
that.
those things about you, you won't be happy.
Yeah, no.
That will definitely be a happiness deterrent if
Yes.
you're believing those things. So,
Yeah.
but this is one that this habit will be one that we all have to work on.
Yes.
And different hurts are different. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot different with levels. You know, it's a
Yes.
little bit easier when somebody says like a one-liner, but when they're
Yeah.
deep, when they're people who've been in your life for a long time,
When it's family, things like that get complicated and that feels hard. Yeah, just giving yourself permission to move on.
yeah, but you'll be happier for it.
Yeah. Number 5 is one of my favorites.
Kindness.
Practicing kindness. I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? That kindness and happiness go hand in hand. We know that from the time we grew up, like helping other people. We don't know why necessarily or don't put it together at first, but it makes us feel so good. Being nice.
And I think that we all kind of want to be kind.
Yeah.
Like it's innocent. It's just hard to make it a habit.
Yeah.
But because you just don't think about it or we just get so busy for being kind, or we forget. But man, doesn't it? It just makes such a difference, and it makes you feel. I think this is the fastest one that makes you feel like as soon as you
an immediate response. Yeah, and they show even practicing kindness lights up. If you looked at brain activation, same areas, pleasure centers as food and sex. So just being nice. So there you go. Right?
I just thought of something and I don't even know if I should say it.
I don't know, how many episodes are we in?
Could you potentially...
I know what you're going to say now.
Could you potentially have a very good experience just from kindness? I think you could probably. If it lights up the same brain, it's like, man, this was so good. I gave that person this and we helped. Yes, maybe one day.
That's an interesting question.
The kindness that Because We Love You does will bring about some of these great responses that we have inferred today.
Woo! We kept that.
I feel good. It was very
vague.
But do it. Let's create habits of kindness.
And I like the idea of creating a culture of kindness because I saw a quote the other day by Bob Goff, who's, I would say, like the love expert, happiness expert, right? We love him so much. But he said, be nice so that, or I think it was, don't be mean because then it makes being mean seem normal, right? And so we can do the opposite. We can make being kind seem like the normal thing, right? The status quo, being kind sounds awesome.
I totally agree with that. And I think even if you don't agree with the person, or even if you have different views, it's not that. I don't think kindness means that you tolerate or that you stand behind them 100% or that you're their biggest supporter. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that you are kind and that you love them and that you want to show the light of Jesus. I think that so many, even like Christians sometimes that I see, they're like, well, I can't be kind to them or because it means I agree with their lifestyle or I agree with what they do. I agree. And I'm just like, no, I don't think so at all. I think that just be kind.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that you're taking any political stance or whatnot. So the habits of kindness.
Kindness. Be kind. The last one we loved so much that we're going to dedicate a whole episode to it. So fun. It's gratitude.
Yes, gratitude. I'm very excited. I think it was inspired by Thanksgiving as well.
Yes,
and we were just
Thanksgiving's
thinking that
coming up.
Yeah, it's just something that we giving thanks is so important.
People are about to start their November 1 a day, what I'm thankful for things on Facebook, which I love to read and see.
Yeah. And so we didn't want to just give 2 minutes to gratitude because man, there's so much information, there's so much research. And I think if we just even touch a little bit of what gratitude means in our life, if we create a lifestyle, a habit of gratitude, man, we'll be different for it. We'll be different. So we'll be more happy.
Yeah. Researchers show that people who, a common thing has been a gratitude journal that's kind of popped up, and that's something we'd encourage you to do. But people who have those are happier. So that's good. Also, they find pretty strong evidence that writing a gratitude letter, so just writing a thank you letter to someone that you feel like maybe you haven't properly thanked. So maybe it could be like looking back to a teacher or a longtime friend that maybe you've lost touch with, just something like that. Writing a letter just to say thank you to someone who's done something really boosts happiness. So
So please check it out. It'll be in a few weeks, and you can learn more about gratitude.
Yeah. So let's review the 6 real quick because that's a lot to remember. Okay. So number 1 was pay attention. Number 2 was to keep friends close, so connecting with your circle. Number 3, get moving, so exercise. Number 4, forgiveness or dropping a grudge. Number 5, practicing kindness. And then 6, gratitude.
Yes.
So good.
So the 6 habits of the 6. Hopefully we can go along this journey with you because we've got to get better and do more of these habits.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of thinking, and it's like, but habits, how do we create them? Because we didn't want to leave anybody hanging, and we wanted to learn more about like, okay, how do we
how do you work it
get into a habit of doing something? Because, there's some people would say, oh, if you do something for 28 days in a row, it becomes a habit. But that's not necessarily true. It's a lot in the brain. So we just kind of wanted to go over that. And so there's 4 phases to a habit. And so the first phase is like the cue. So that's like the brain. That's like something that triggers, hey, I got to do this. Yeah. And the cue is very hard at first because there's nothing, because the cue always needs a reward. Yeah. It always needs something that tells us it's time to do this. So at first you don't have a reward. You only have the hope
or it
of
could
a reward.
Automatically be a sight or smell, could be a cue, but sometimes we need to create our own cues, especially if we think about some of this. So if we take kindness, for example, as one of our habits that we're trying to regularly practice. So one thing that we could do is just write yourself a note. Like I think, get your eyeliner or lipstick and write, be kind on your mirror, or get a Post-it note and write, be kind, and stick it on your steering wheel in the morning, just as a cue. So it could be something natural that stands out, but sometimes we just have to create those cues.
And I think at first you really do for things that don't come natural. There are some habits that just come natural, like when you brush your teeth. Yeah. Like, okay, it feels really good. Yeah. And it's going to help your teeth not fall out. Yeah. So it's pretty easy to have that cue. But for the these at first, they're going to be a little bit harder. Like forgive today. A little bit harder to think about. But after the cue comes the craving. And this is something that you have to have the cue to initiate the craving. The craving's the wanting. Yeah. It's the desire that comes. And it's really easy when it's cookies. Yes. But it's not quite as easy when it's kindness or something like that. Or something to do.
So we have the cue, and then, seeing the cue sometimes hopefully will make you want to do it, especially after you've done it a few times and you realize how it makes you feel. Hopefully the craving will come. Positive. I want to be kind, right?
Yes. And then you go into the response, and that's the habit. That's what you do. Because all of these things take doing something. They won't just come about overnight. It will take taking the meal, for kindness, or it will take complimenting.
Saying a nice thing, surprising someone you love.
Planning the party, taking the responsibilities, watching someone's kids for a night out. It will take the do.
We're happy to be on the other side of your kindness if you want to watch our children for us.
True that. True that. Then our most favorite part, phase 4, is the reward. Yeah. Right? Yep. The reward. And we know, because science tells us, that the reward of these things are happiness. Yes. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Feeling good. Also, we just talked about even the way your body feels, right? The way your brain is activated. Your pleasure centers are all lit up. So
meaningful, purposeful, because a reward, to be a reward, has to satisfy you or teach you. And I think that's not everybody gets that pleasure center elicited with teaching or learning something, but it's so interesting that those are the 2 things that rewards give you, because when you learn something, it's just like, for me, it makes me so excited.
Feels so good. Yes.
Yeah. And that's that. Side note, but that's what I really wish our education system would really prioritize, because I think if we could get these kids like, I know something, like I'm smarter, I figured this out, then I think that education. Yeah,
that's a rewarding part, right? Kind of the grade system has changed our motivation for work. It's externally driven. I want an A, not like, oh, it just feels so good to learn something new.
to be an expert.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, we're going to go into that. We're definitely tackling that. But those are the 4 phases, and then they need to happen over and over again. The reward, hopefully, will now be the trigger for your cue.
Yes.
Because your brain will be like, I want that reward. I want that reward. I want to feel happy. I want that. We definitely get it, with the cookie. We're like, I want that warm, ooey, gooey chocolate chip.
Yes. I really want one right now.
Right now. That's our cue.
As soon as we leave here.
Might do it.
But one thing I want to say before, as we wrap up here, is thinking about all these habits. One thing that I think can be dangerous, and Jade and I chatted about this a little bit as we were prepping this message, is I think like sometimes the pursuit of happiness can make us unhappy. Like, there's so much pressure to try and be happy and to try and feel happy all the time and to find the things that make us happy, go on the next trip, do all this stuff. And even thinking about these habits, which are all good things, if we become just so focused on creating and doing these things, like I have to exercise so I can be happy, I think that can actually make us unhappy, right? Because it feels like work. And when we kind of had this feeling of like, is this dangerous in some way? And interestingly, the Greater Good Science Center talked about this, and they actually recommend, they say, to pursue happiness indirectly. So we don't want you to leave today thinking like, I need to go and do the thing so I can be happy. But the recommendation is what we've talked about today, like just build in patterns, just pick up habits that are positive and are naturally built into your life and that lead to happiness, right? But we can't focus on I'm just doing these things to be happy, because then that makes us unhappy. So it's a weird thing, but I think that's the danger of thinking about these habits.
I think in our last episode we kind of talked about what people think makes them happy. And those were a lot of the things that directly make us happy. A pretty face for 5 minutes, money for, 6 weeks because we got the bonus and then we spent it all. Age because we're young and healthy and we feel a lot better in our body, aka I'm 35, 36, oh gosh, and don't exactly feel like a spring chicken. But we think that makes us happy because it's that direct happiness, but it's this indirect, it's this prioritizing positivity.
Yeah, that's good.
And so and that like as we've learned that, it's like, it's like what are the things that create that reward center for sure, but that we prioritize them. And I kind of saw this illustrated this morning, actually. I was on the way to school with Bella and Blake. I was dropping them off. And I had happiness on my mind, of course. I already had my happiness sweater on. and so I was just thinking, and I was like, let's play some music. Let's be happy. And so I put on Be Happy and clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Yeah, you're clapping right now. So we were playing that. So we were turning it up, and immediately, like, joy came on Blake's face, and she was back there, and she was like, oh, what do I do with this? Mommy usually does not dance and be this happy this early in the morning. We're usually doing other things. And Bella was like, what's going on? But all of a sudden, I'm like, come on, girls. And we just started clapping, and we were so happy, and we were singing these songs. And Blakely said, Mommy, you weird. You can hear in her little voice, Mommy, you so weird. And Bella, she kind of wanted to turn it down as we were going through that like drive line. And I'm like, no, Bella, no. And I cranked it up even louder. And you know how they're really responsible and they have great teachers at Colfax Elementary opening the door. So they open the door and immediately this guy's face changes. He's like, yeah, clap along. And he just starts clapping. And then the lady down next to hears the music and then the little boy. And it was just like, everybody was like happy. And it just created a different, it was prioritizing positivity, but it was indirectly. But I'm like, we've got to do those things more. Like sing the song, do the thing. And it just illustrated our point. And I just felt so good. And I was like, that's how we have a happier life, is making sure we don't miss those moments. Pay attention when the moment comes up and just prioritize it. Prioritize the positive things in your life.
Yes. I love that. I feel so happy now. Do you feel so happy?
Yes.
So happy. Do you feel happy? Tell us how happy you are. And this week, practice kindness. Do one thing. Do one thing, do a kind thing, or write a note, put it on your steering wheel or on your mirror and send us a picture. We want to see it. Tag us in it. Yeah.
Yes.
So this week, work on your habits to happiness. Why, Jade?
Because we love you.